Today, we're talking about PvP in Star Citizen, and we're going all the way back. As we do, little history tour, little deep dive, we're going back 9 years. I'll be the first to tell you, what they said 9 years ago is not exactly what they're going to do now. Obviously, things change as they design things. They, make the actual gameplay and figure out what they can and can't do. But today, I wanted to talk about, because this seems to be a really big topic with a lot of misunderstandings and information that, I guess, like expectations for a game that maybe isn't what people were expecting. So we're going to talk today from the CEO himself, from various game directors, and of course from the latest episode of Star Citizen Live, the different plans and things that they've talked about for what the heck content in Star Citizen is supposed to be regarding how players interact with each other and how they interact with the game. And you might be surprised from what you hear. It's not supposed to be all one or all the other. And really the point of this is not to give you my own opinion on it, though my opinions will come out. Of course, that's I'm here. It's hard to just cut all your opinions out, but the point of this is to just try and help to spread the information, what was actually said. We're just going to dive straight into it with a question about PvP sliders that Chris Roberts answers, quite frankly, back in 2015, but also talks more about the whole point of there being PvP or the lack thereof in certain areas. All the way back in 2015, remember, this is 9 years ago, so take all of this with a little bit of a grain of salt, but I think especially the 90 to 10 statistic that you do hear here is going to be, it's pretty key, and I think they're still sticking with that. So here we go.
Any updates on the PvP slider? Is it still on the horizon? Any additional information?
No, I mean, it's kind of how I described. I mean, I actually think that, I still see all this debate and people go, it's move force on the PvP, I hate it, or you better be in PvP or whatever. So I just think people should, before theory crafting kind of what that's going to end up being, should try to experience it.
Or never changes.
Because the actual way the game's going to work is, because we're simulating it with so many NPCs, it doesn't matter if there's no one at all running around. There will be lots of NPCs going about their jobs, and some potentially could be a pirate who could attack you, or just be traders or whatever. So there will be a whole world and life that's just like the old school privateer or freelancer that will be going on. And in the more regulated or policed areas, sort of PvP is frowned on. Mm-hmm. And if you get busted for it, then you can have a bounty on your head, and it will also mean that other players have legal PvP on you. So it's not just the AI is after you; it means that other players can also come after you, and it's okay because you're wanted for breaking the law in whatever a safe area. So I actually think that if you want to have that sort of old privateer experience, you will have it. If you want to find other players to fight, you will have that. We'll have all the stuff, and I don't think you're going to really get forced into it either way. And in general, even if we have millions of players playing the game, as you move around, you are probably more likely to encounter more AI than you are players, because we need it to have a world feel alive.
Okay, which is there's the biggest thing so far. Can I make the video a little louder? Man, they did not do good with sound back then. I've already boosted 20%, but I'll pick it up a bit more. There's the first thing. Like, Star Citizen still doesn't have functional AI because the backend is so overloaded with the whole, server meshing and just taking a lot of the load off of the game running the game. AI is not great. How often do you see AI haulers flying around, or AI security escorting them, or patrolling trade lanes? These things don't even happen. So there's already a disconnect between the plan for the game and the way the game plays right now. Nobody is really able to actually get much protection. And that's a big thing that's missing from the whole point of the design, and what is kind of supposed to make it easier for people to remain safe.
One of the big differences with what the Star Citizen setup is building this a live world, and to do it properly we can't rely on the player base, because at a certain time of night there may not be that many players, and then another time there could be a lot of them. So that's why we're we have this rule that the player base is going to be no more than 10% of the overall sort of population of the universe. And so at that point, most of the people, by the very definition, if that's the case, 9 out of 10 of the people, ships that you will meet will be AI, they will not be players. So it's kind of up to you to decide what style, and there definitely will be PvP.
And that's the other side of it. If they can do that, it's a big if, I know. Again, I'm not theory crafting. Somebody said in my last video that I'm theory crafting. I am not theory crafting. I'm literally showing you the information they say. And if they can meet the goal that they've set out for that 9 out of every 10 people you meet is AI, most people will probably never have to worry about running into a combative player. Now, I don't know if they can meet that goal. That's a heck of a goal. But they're clearly trying to make sure that you are not forced into a PvP scenario. They might be creating areas that have more PvP, but the whole point is then that they're supposed to be pushing people to not want to go to those places. So, like, avoid those areas. Like, if you're in the Crusader system, don't go to the Yellow Asteroid Belt, right? If you're in Aberdeen, don't go near the prison. And if you are anywhere near Pyro, don't go in. And to be fair, games have tried to do this, and they fail or succeed to a certain amount, so I don't think they're just going to 100% knock this out of the park and make it happen. But this is the goal. This is the direction they're trying to go in. They're not trying to make sure that everybody is always encountering everybody else.
I mean, where I see sort of a lot more of the PvP coming into play is the organization stuff. I definitely see the organizations are going to get together and they'll be like, I want to fight over this, this piece of this, asteroid base. Or we'll definitely have areas where we'll allow players to sort of, kind of come together to try and dominate an area. And so I think there'll be sort of PvP conflict based around that, and then there'll be plenty of just going about your life, doing the business, earning some money that you can probably completely avoid PvP if you want to.
And that's rely only on our citizens. We absolutely rely on you. We can't rely only on the citizens.
You guys can't rely on us. We'll just break everything.
Continuing the PvP thread, is there going to be a method to knock ships out of quantum travel, or can we interdict people out of quantum, interdict people out of jump points?
Well, I mean, jump points not so much, but quantum basically, yeah. I mean, if you are in the way.
So I think that was mainly the talk about PvP that I wanted to get to right there. That was the overall focus of this point. This is a really crucial couple of minutes because I can't recall where else he's ever talked about this whole 90-10 ratio, but we've always quoted it. We've always talked about it. We've always kind of relied on it to talk about what the whole point of the game is. And that is that when you're playing the game, like Goliath said, mostly you're running into AI in this game. It's just that those AI don't really do much, So from there, we're going to this Calling All Devs episode. Calling All Devs is just one of the different versions of Star Citizen Live they used to do. In this one, essentially, they would just call out, Jared would call out to different developers around the different offices and ask them questions that came in from us. And we see this now with Star Citizen Live. It's what we're about to watch when we do this Contested Zones and Asteroid Bases episode here. But back then, it was a little bit more of like just a Zoom call kind of thing.
Good.
You ready to talk about PvP?
I am.
All right.
I am.
Let's start at we all know how it works now. The Star Citizens, they've played it. We don't need to talk about how it works now. Let's talk about the future of PvP. Where is Star Citizen PvP going?
Okay. So,
by the way, this is 2020, so a little more up to date, but they could probably still do with an update.
I think from that standpoint, you have to think about how different solar systems are connected to each other. So, and obviously, Stanton is a somewhat lawful system. It's got UEE versus Pyro is supposed to be a very unlawful system, or lawless system. And then, so where players want to be able to find the PvP versus where players don't want to find it, they want to focus more on PvE. I would start there. So they started, what system should I be in? What system, do I want to go to? And
If I'm in Terra, I probably should feel pretty safe. If I'm in Pyro, I should be looking over my shoulder.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So, and with that, it basically comes down to, we'll never be able to 100%, guarantee, hey, you're 100% safe. And frankly, we don't want to do that.
See, I think that's a big key. And this is probably the kind of stuff that they should just straight up put on the front page of the website. Because a lot of people are really not happy that they're finding out now that PvP isn't, there's not really a guarantee against it. Granted, like he said, you're not 100% safe, but like if you're 99% safe, what's really the difference? But yeah, that's a big quote and a big thing to say. And a lot of people sign up for this game without being able to find this kind of information because it's not easy to find. So I understand people are disappointed about that, but they've been repeating this for quite a while.
And I would put it more on the scale of, let's say, 90 to 10, or, and maybe in a lawless area, it's the complete opposite. It's 10 to 90 kind of thing. So we never want it to be a 0. We never want it to be 100%. So, but even then in Stanton, we still want there to be areas for people look for PvP. We still want there to be areas that are, mostly geared toward PvE. So it will really just depend on kind of how the player goes about looking for them. And then, are you turning off the monitored zones? Are you, basically out in the middle of nowhere? So, and if so, then yeah, then I think it should happen there. Then we obviously have like abandoned space stations and Jump Town and these.
Korea.
It's the abandoned space stations, like literally talking about it in 2020, and they're just now getting actually in front of our faces with these latest ISCs. Not in the game, but just how long it can sometimes take for them to answer these questions and say these things and then actually get into the game. Again, I think this is one of those things that they wanted to do abandoned space stations a while ago. I doubt I could find it right now. But at one point, it was on the roadmap. Oh, gosh, I think it was probably like around 3.5 or 3.6. It was showing up on the roadmaps. There's probably no way maybe it's in one of these updates from Odysseus, who was publishing these 6 freaking years ago, I believe. For some reason the picture won't pop. Let's see if it's on here. So that would be in like locations, area 18, rest stop, space stations, rest stop, space stations, unoccupied. So they had them planned all the way out in 3.7. They had unoccupied space stations planned for the game. Same with these cargo space station, unoccupied, refinery space station, unoccupied. Like this just goes to show how much stuff around that time was getting delayed. You can see here we had 2 mission givers. You see that? Yeah. 2 mission givers that they wanted to have included in Orison, cut. Because AI was not able to function well enough. Here's another one, Eddie Parr, mission giver meant to be at Microtech. You can find him at the bar. He's working, but he's not a mission giver. And there's just a ton of things like that were delayed from around this time that I think ultimately they ended up getting delayed for different reasons, but they all kind of cascaded down from the fact that server meshing did not really ever work. And then there was salvage. Oh my god. Salvage got delayed so much. But yeah, the idea behind all these different things that they were talking about back then, that they had on the roadmap back then, these are things that we're just now starting to see come to fruition, which is why a lot of people do feel pretty positive about the direction Star Citizen has been going. Not necessarily because they've suddenly sped up and the dams have opened and all that stuff, but a lot of the things that used to get delayed are actually showing up. Gives a feeling of like they may have started to pass some milestones that allows them to get more stuff in. But I know, as well as all of you, 2024 has proven to be a slower year than they tried to say it would be. So the jury is still out on that. And and I can't, I don't even, looking at comment sections for any videos or podcasts I do will tell you that, people are very aware of it.
They have like abandoned space stations and Jumptown and these
Korea, the
again,
hotspots.
Exactly. So we have certain hotspots, within the system that I still think they're 100% valid, and that people should be able to go there and try that out.
It serves a double purpose. It attracts the people looking for it to those places, and it lets the people who want to avoid those places.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to butcher his accent, Mrs. Tomato.
In the star map in the future, where
you come in here and do it.
Where like hotspots of of activity, and then that kind of can gear or at that point in time you can choose your route, with that information. So I know that we've talked about like a PvP slider, and we're not going to have anything that's player facing, but obviously for us as developers, we still want to be able to tune, how much, if the players are gearing more towards PvP, based off their actions, then that's more of the content that we would be pushing towards them, whether those be bounties or assassination missions or those types of things.
Okay.
But if the players are not geared towards that, then, that to me is basically their choices matter, in kind of the content that we're providing towards them and pushing, towards them.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't know, because the current mobiGlas really just kind of pushes everything to everyone, but I do wonder if it will start to favor what it pushes to the forefront of your screen, like to give you more of the content that you seem to lean towards. Interesting idea. So,
and then as far as even just how the fights play out. So let's say you and I are fighting PvP, and let's say I have a warrant, for my arrest because I've been a bad boy, and you killed me, so therefore the reward that you're getting, for taking me out should be higher because you're going up against another player. Then you'll be able to, when physical inventory comes in, then anything that I'm carrying with me, you'll be able to take, and it might be in damage, or it might be in disrepair, or other things happen, during the fight, but it'll be up to you to choose if you want to take it or not. And so that gives the players, different ways to collect rewards or basically loot, the bodies or the ships, based off of that action.
Okay. Imagine physical.
There's that physical inventory that Jared's about to go into again. Again, something that they talked about a lot throughout all the development of this game. And really what we're seeing now is just the problem they've run into is that there's so much information. It's hard to find out. I don't know if there should be like an FAQ would be good, but there's so many Fs to Q. Or there's so many Qs to A. There's so many A's to I don't know. There's just so many questions to have about this game. But I think this would be one of the ones that should be really obviously stated somewhere in the main page of the game. Like, this game will have a lot of interaction between players. It might not be as much as other games, but there will be interaction. It was mentioned to check this out. This is another place where they mentioned that 90% NPCs will make up 90% of the universe statement on the Kraken Privateer Q&A. So thank you for that call out. Again, another broken web page. So in a couple seconds here, yeah, there it goes. The web page will break. But there are several places where they do talk about 90% NPCs. They talk about physical inventory. They talk about there will be some PvP. All, again, things that bug people, especially this year as they're starting to be implemented, that don't get talked about enough for people to know very commonly.
The ships, based off of that action.
Gotcha. I imagine physicalized inventory is probably going to play a bigger role in choosing your loadouts and such too. At least for the maybe not for the ship version, but for the FPS version, when you can only
Yeah, thanks, Dunkel.
with you, as Yoda would say. I imagine
Yeah.
it's going to become pretty important.
Yeah, and I think that will be somewhat of a game changer as far as this is a new way of playing. Because basically taking that global inventory out of play, when you're out in the middle of nowhere and you don't have any food or you don't have any ammo or you don't have any of this stuff, like you need to basically prepare for the worst and always be thinking about, okay, what's the situation I'm going to be going into? Do I have the right equipment for it? And if the answer is no, then you might die, or you have a higher likelihood of dying.
Gotcha. So if I'm understanding correctly, I'm just going to wrap you up here, make sure I got it. For folks who are looking for PvP opportunities, there will be holistic solutions, places like Pyro.
Yeah, 315 was huge. Man, people don't even know before, like how it was before 315. You just had everything all the time. And then suddenly it was limited to your space station and planet. And then it was limited to just your space station or just your planet. And now it's limited to what's on your back. And it's just been like a slow working towards that.
Places like Jump Point, places like Korea, places that encourage and draw that activity to it. For people who want to avoid it, there will be lawful systems like Terra and Stanton, it's like that, where they won't be 100% protected from it, but it will be highly discouraged, and they should be able to play most of their play experience, free from potential molestation from other players. Physicalized inventory is going to be have a big effect by providing rewards for people who come after will come after you for PvP, and then forcing you to choose what you take with you
Exactly.
From a strategic standpoint.
And then the green and basically the green zones. So like we will be adjusting the way that the green zones work and making them more law based. So if you do act up in the city, then there's turrets that are there or security comes after you. So there's other aspects like that will.
Again, that's not theory crafting. They've said it themselves. These are meant to be zones that are protected by turrets and security, not just by completely taking people's ability to use their weapons away.
Come into play.
So there will always be the potential for PvP in these safe places. It's just the folks who want it will have to really work for it in those lawful places, like in the heart of the empire.
Correct.
And stuff.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think with that, it's again, I like there being tension within the game. It could be very low, tension, but I still want there to be that tension,
right,
there. So something could pop off, and then you have to deal with, the circumstances at that time. So, that's.
And then the PvP slider is an internal tool instead of a forward-facing tool for the players. Used to determine what type of missions and everything that are available to it. It's almost seems like a reputation meter, sort of like if you get higher PvP reputation, we provide you more PvP opportunities, and if you have a lower PvP reputation, then we provide you more PvE opportunities.
Correct.
Cool. All right, I think we're
now again, this is 4 years ago. Things can change, but this was the direction that they were headed in. And somebody mentioned they need to change the size of backpacks to be able to store things. I think that they could slide a little on that. I don't think people should be able to just throw everything they want in a backpack. I think having containers, and especially having somebody who is the relegated mule for a group, is a good part of strategy and group play. But I think that you should be able to carry at least like one pack of armor and a gun in your backpack. That seems reasonable. In large backpacks, at least, Make it so that somebody has to wear large armor in order to do that stuff. Or give us something that kind of follows us around and can hold that stuff. I don't know. There are things they can do. I just really don't like the response to these game systems of like, no, just completely do away with it. Go completely in the other direction. Like, balance it. Come up with something that can do a midpoint between how you want to design it and what works best for players, so that we can still experience that consequence and that strategy that you're looking for, but at least it's not super hardcore going to ruin a game session every single time. Yeah, like Death Stranding. Let us look real goofy with the boxes stacking high.
Hey, Richard, how you doing, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. We're talking PvP today. So, we're talking PvP, and this may seem like a weird slot in there, but physicalized inventory, external inventory, being able to only have that which you take with you. Talk to us about where we're at with that current development.
So physical inventory, well, first thing I want to say about physical inventory is how it ties into the core combat gameplay loop and why it exists and why we're doing it. And, because obviously some people like think, well, what? Inventory? Like, how does that tie into combat, right? That doesn't kind of make logical sense. So first off, from a high level point of view, you've got to think about what is the core gameplay loop for Star Citizen in terms of the FPS combat loop. And the FPS combat loop it starts way before you even get into combat. And that is, what equipment do I have? What guns do I have? What resistances am I going to come up against? What environment am I going to be in? And this also ties into things like actor status and other things, and and food and drink. So at the moment, when you're in Star Citizen, essentially you can open your mobiGlas and you can change your equipment at the drop of a hat. You can have 1,000 med pens in there, and you can heal indefinitely. But as you can see,
The
with
good old days.
system that we've added, and the actor status in terms of the environmental actor status in terms of hypothermia effects and hyperthermia effects, you can start to see kind of the direction that we're heading in. And the reason that is that before you get into that combat scenario, you need to be thinking ahead and going, okay, what kind of environment, what kind of situations do I think that I'm going to encounter? So, am I going to need a long range weapon? Am I going to need a short range weapon? Should I pick ballistics versus energy? Because eventually,
Thanks for the membership, Right Cops.
as it does in the ships. And, in terms of armor, am I going to go to a harsh environment? Am I going to need to worry about extreme temperature? Am I going to need to worry about, heavy armor versus light armor? Because eventually, with medium and heavy armor, you're not going to be able to fly a ship. You'll have to stow those away. So, and then it's like, well, am I going to need to be in combat as soon as I get out of the ship? So there's all these different things. And then you've got to think of things like, I'm going to be hungry, or am I going to be thirsty, and what type of foods am I going to take, and what type of drinks am I going to take in terms of, do I want stamina regeneration
Rich, of course it's going to be cruise. Come on, man.
buff, or do I want certain types of buffs to play into that combat? And all of that, and that doesn't even include things like gadgets and throwables, and when you take all of those things that you actually think, okay, I actually use a lot of those things in combat in terms of how my actor status is playing. I don't want to turn up weakened, I want to be at peak condition, in terms of the environment's going to affect me, and so on and so forth. When you don't have that at the drop of the hat, that is a game changer. That fundamentally changes how you approach leaving the beautiful metropolises of the landing zones and all of the nice and happy furry areas that you can stay in,
And the
going
safety
to
of your
these
ship
harsh
and stuff,
environments. Exactly. And at that point you have to go, well, okay, I've got a limited space. I can't just take 1,000 med pens anymore. I can only take 5 or 6. Maybe I have to store some in my backpack, and I have to take some food, and I've got to take ammo, and I'm going to need oxygen, and all of a sudden you're starting to think of, well, I can't take, and it's like you're going on holiday, right? You might be going for 2 weeks, and you can't be like, well, is it going to be hot? Is it going to be cold? You have to limit what you can take. And so,
Unless you're Hermione and you have a purse that can go to anywhere. Such a cheat. Just breaking the inventory system. Does subscribing on Twitch actually... You'll get ads being subbed? Stupid.
you have to really think about those situations that you're going to be in. So once you get into combat, all of the previous decisions that you've made are going to influence how that combat plays out. And that's why when you take the whole of the core gameplay loop, there is a beginning in terms of the preparation, in terms of how you set up. And, there's that preparation also bleeds up into, you might be scouting a particular area that you've seen, and there's enemy AI, and, you're using a gadget to kind of map out where they are. You're looking with binoculars or your scope, you're tagging enemies and tagging them onto the FPS radar and scanning. You're scanning particular things. Maybe there's a bounty down there that you want to get. And, and all of that ties into your preparation.
Richard, why were you here in 2020 talking about 4.5, man? We still don't have FPS radar and scanning.
Operation phase. Then obviously the combat phase, in terms of you engaging your plan, reacting to what happens, how that pans out. And then there is also a post-combat phase which completes the loop, and that post-combat phase is the looting mechanics in terms of, okay, what can I take? And if you're like full to the brim with like, hey, I just filled my backpack, well, you're not going to be able to just carry everything out, and you might be like, oh, well, actually I'm going to drag this guy back to my ship, or maybe I want to take someone alive. And so when you talk about the full combat loop, you can see that whole premise of how just physical inventory by itself becomes a huge game changer. So physical inventory by a feature in itself, we've kind of slowly started to add it every patch. So we started with the commodity inventory with FPS mining in terms of having a backpack and storing commodities in there. And that was always going to be a temporary solution because it's to support mining. You can see now with the personal inner thought that, we have the wheel and you can see where you're mining, and that is actually going to be changed to what we're calling now as the external inventory. And it was never the intention that it was always going to be a wheel. It was actually going to go to a grid system now, but it won't be just a grid system like you're having to manage everything in the grid or you're playing Tetris or anything like that. It's actually a really innovative system where it's almost like a list, but it almost think of it like when you're moving an app on an iPhone.
Right.
How it melds around that. Yeah. And so what that gives us, it gives us an overview of your character, an overview of all of the items that you're going to have, and you're going to be able to directly interface with your character and the items that you have, and vice versa, you'll be able to directly interface with external inventory. So for example, other players' backpacks on the ground, or crates or cargo or whatever, anything that doesn't have necessarily a physical representation in the world. It might have a physical volume represented in the game, but those things aren't necessarily inside of it.
So this has kind of changed since then because they brought the whole looting menu in. Now you have not necessarily a big inventory screen where you can have things interacting as you drag them around, but it's just like a basic looting menu for your external inventories. I do wonder I feel like the looting menu needs to be rethought because they need to allow you to, like, there's too many logistics involved with inventories in this game for us to use just that small area. You know what they need to do is probably remake the inventory screen into a first-person UI that you can click out of for the looting menu, because the looting menu is great for quick stuff. I actually really like what they did there for the really, really fast stuff, your weapons, your consumables, and your ammo. But when it comes to all of the items you want to be carrying and the different armor and stuff that you're doing, I do think that they should probably continue using an inventory screen. Just make it first person. Third person inventory is stupid. Die.
So that what I just described there is kind of like the end goal, and that's when we have item persistence and iCache comes online.
iCache.
But the first kind of next step is to kind of interact that external inventory, that UI interface, which will be an extension of the personal inner thoughts as it is now. You can still just press I and open the inventory. And you will have the grid-based system, and it'll still be just commodities at the beginning. So that means that food and drink or minables, the things that you can currently put in your backpack, you'll be able to still put in your backpack. But it means that when we have, like, say, be able to interact with the cargo hold and be like, hey, I can put things directly in there or take FPS minables out of there. And that'll be kind of like the next iteration. And you can see that we're slowly but surely moving towards that. And eventually that then will become full items can be able to go in there. And then you'll have your character in the middle that you'll be able to switch around, take items directly off your character into the interface and back and forth. And so
we lost that.
That kind of gives you kind of
lost that with 324 and then we got it back.
Inventory is on the character level and external inventory on the UI, but that is such a wide-ranging thing because as soon as you say you can't carry everything, you need the physicalized storage on ships, you need it in habs, your hangar. So I mean, when we get to there, and we will get to there, it will be an incredible moment because the tech and the iCache and the item persistency will be online, and we will have a very different game than we have today.
And people gonna be pissed about it.
Absolutely. Who would have thought you could talk for 7 minutes about inventory? And
when you ask Richard Tyrer a question, you better make sure you ask the right question because he's gonna answer it.
its importance to PvP, and I'm willing to bet that was the short version.
That was the short version.
That was the short version.
But to be honest, Jared, what I'm actually going to say is you can't talk to me about PvP without talking to me about Theatres of War.
Fair enough. You want to call Sean in on the? You want to add Sean to the call?
Don't talk about Theatres of War, though.
Theatres of War?
No, that's a bad idea. Don't talk about Theatres of War. Oh, God. Oh, God, guys. Oh, no.
Thanks.
Oh, no. I didn't know we were going to get into this.
We're talking POP, PvP,
PvP.
and Theatres of War. Give us the top level. How are we doing? How's it doing?
Well, technically, it's not just PvP.
Oh, no. Do we want to go down this rabbit hole?
By the way, it's kind of PvP VE a little bit, just because we've got some AI ships going on in there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, mostly PvP between it. It's been going really well. Super excited to have gotten it out for 2 large weekend tests with the Evocati. And it was really important for us to be able to do this. And I wish we could have done it even sooner than we did. But we had a lot of work to do right after CitizenCon. And this might be rehashing some of the stuff, but we had to update to Planet V4. We had to consume some of the physics refactors, and we had to coexist within a certain stream. So just took a little bit of time to keep everything running.
Mm-hmm. And how's it going now? We've had 2 tests. You just did an AMA on Spectrum. What's next for Theatres of War? What's the path forward look like?
Well, yeah, sort of first, I guess, how it all went, which is what you were asking in the first place there. But it did go quite well. The first test was a little bit rough in terms of performance, and we all recognized that right out of the gate. We didn't recognize quite how bad that would get, and that really comes down to we've only got a certain set of team, and then the development group, which is all of CIG, mm-hmm. and then Evocati. So it's like this slow scaling that we've been doing, and I've been treating this very, very specifically, so that every time we do scale, we can actually take action on the things that come up during that scaling, because always things come up, and it's a lot broader than just the game as well. Some of the big things that we had to work on anyways were to do with matchmaking, to do with party join, to do with squads, those kind of things. So the first Evocati test, definitely had some performance problems. We spent a whole sprint focused on it. It was like, I think 80% of the changes, it was something like 170, 180 changes that came in from not just the Theatres of War group or the Arena Commander group, but the rest of the company as well. And all of these things ended up benefiting the PU. So when everybody's going to be getting together within the PU, whether that's these 20-on-20 battles or full 50 players, you actually see that the performance is dramatically improved because of all the things that we've actually done. And in some cases, we might have gone a little too far trying to optimize, the art against some of the game code. All of these things really are the bits.
Okay. Let's talk about this. There are probably quite a few people in chat who have not heard too much, or maybe have never heard about Theatres of War. Let me introduce you. Theatres of War. What? Why am I here? Hey, did I vote? I did. Theatres of War was... Oh, man. Basically it was Arena Commander, but it was a type of game mode for Arena Commander. This was an attempt. Damn, this is a painful one. Theatres of War is one of those things that they it was like a little project. It was meant to be able to allow them to test PvP, basically, without making everybody go and do it all the time in the actual game, in the persistent universe. And the idea behind it was that they could have mixed arms combat between ships, weapons, and ground vehicles to better understand how everything balanced against each other, because the PU both didn't run very well, and also people didn't really want to fight that much in the PU because you'd have to restart like crazy. So this is I mean, I'm pretty sure we now have a version of Theaters of War in Arena Commander, because you can now do mixed arms combat, but they couldn't make it work because it was so demanding, as the game is, and whenever they tried to run it, like he was saying, they ran it in Evocati a few times, but as they scaled up, it just didn't run well. And everybody could see that happening over the course of maybe a year and a half after they introduced it. And I think overall, they're trying to basically do the same thing in Arena Commander, just more slowly now. Things like server meshing probably can help with that. But overall, it wasn't functional enough for them to do what they actually wanted to do with it, which was testing. And and there wasn't sorry, I just completely lost my train of thought. Mrs. Tomato's distracting me. There wasn't enough it wasn't stable enough for them to do the testing they wanted to do. So it basically went quiet. It wasn't even like an announcement like, oh, we're moving on from Theaters of War. They just kind of stopped talking about it. And everybody's like, okay, so is it happening or not? But there were, let me try and find a trailer for it here. As somebody said in chat, it was kind of like Battlefield, which is a really cool idea. I mean, if it worked out, this sounded amazing. It basically was like, okay, this is essentially Battlefront in Star Citizen, which is awesome. It just didn't work. Check this out.
Come home in one piece.
As you can see, classic Star Citizen performance. Like, the idea behind this is great. There's a whole game series based on it. But the FPS combat we had back in 2019 was nothing compared to what we have now. And what we have now still doesn't match up to the other games that play like this, like Battlefield or Battlefront or even some Call of Duty modes. So I wouldn't say it was destined to fail, but it was a big thing to take on alongside an already existent persistent universe and Squadron 42 and the rest of Arena Commander. So I think that ultimately this could be a really, really solid game mode to be able to do outside of the persistent universe. You can log into Star Citizen, you just want like an hour of play, you just want to play with some friends, you hop into a large mixed arms game mode, and that's pretty sick. But it didn't work. And the coolest part of it was this whole idea that like you were basically working your way through different territories as the attacking group. You'd have to hold down a certain area, and then you'd have to go and attack like a satellite dish to turn off some kind of a shield. And then eventually, once you finished up that objective, the battleground would shift, and everybody would have to then fly up to the space station and duke it out up there. So you'd have to get transport, you'd have to strategize with your team, you get up to the space station and you have to board it and land and then attack the other players who are defending this. It's kind of like Battlefield 2142, which was an amazing game. But again, it didn't really work out. So and as far as testing PvP goes, that would have been great. But it didn't happen. And because it was said to be this great new thing that was coming to Star Citizen as a new game mode to test and a new part of Arena Commander, it also then became a place where people were very mocking of it because it never showed its face, and it really just kind of faded away with the same problem that the rest of the game deals with, which was stability.
Bits that we learned while we were doing it. So one of the big things that we saw was, server performance was great. That was running at a solid frame rate. Really had no hitches. as far as the server was concerned. But when we scaled up our concurrency to about 5 times what we had tried previously, we had some things going on with the matchmaker, so we had to take care of that. A lot of that came down to party joins and some of the logic that would go on within there, because as everyone might be aware, we utilize all the Arena Commander, Star Marine infrastructure and matchmaker. So a lot of it is either updating that, fixing things that have rotted, or making it more fit for purpose as we're going through. One of the other things that we spent a lot of time.
I really hope we do someday get that, because like people are saying in chat, it's really freaking cool. Just didn't work.
There's very hard data for us to make some decisions on, and some of the things that come out of it are pretty interesting. And I kind of jokingly sent an update through, I think to Bayor, and he put it online, which was that the fire extinguisher got a kill, and we're going, okay, where is that fire extinguisher? Right?
I didn't even know there was a fire extinguisher in the level.
Well, there is in Star Marine levels, and they explode, but this wasn't how somebody got a kill. This was a physical impact thing that happened with that. So happens a chair, just to add to the mystery, a chair got 2 kills. This was a Valkyrie chair.
Imagine getting killed by a freaking chair.
So,
Panic Switch, thank you for the sub, mate. 17 months now.
Worse than a chair.
Appreciate you, buddy.
Good info.
I think one of the fundamental difference as well to cover where we want to go next is, if you look at theaters as a breakdown of the gameplay systems from the PU in terms of the FPS action, the combat action, and all of those things like put into one big pot, we got some incredible feedback from the community in terms of how the handling, the character feeling, is the objective right in terms of the balance, the layout of the map. And we sat down and we read through all of that feedback. We broke it down, and we got some gold dust from that feedback. And we've created a plan for the next test of Theatre of War, and I think you'll find that when we come to it next, it's going to play dramatically different. I think it will feel more Star Citizen in the best of way, and I think that's something that I think with theaters when we started out, it's you can say like with Arena Commander and Star Marine when they started out, they're kind of very distilled experiences themselves. Mm-hmm. And when you think of Theatre of War, what we took to CitizenCon, we're still kind of putting those together, and we were kind of learning, how they best fit together. And these last 2 tests have really given us some more information, both from a quantitative point of view in terms of the analytics that we got back, and we had a lot of analytics in there, and from a qualitative point of view in terms of speaking to the guys, reading the discords, having a look on Reddit, having a look in our own forums. We got a lot of internal feedback because we were playing. Literally, the whole company was playing that Theatre of War literally like every day for a good 2 months before we went live, and to try and get how did it play, and to make sure that we were playing it and getting feedback. So we got a lot of that done, and I think the next version is going to feel more responsive. It will have a lot of the things that make Star Citizen unique and great, and it will definitely feel like more of a Star Citizen game mode, and that is something that we're really really endeavoring to.
Calling things more of a Star Citizen feel is like not necessarily a positive, because it was broken, and gosh,
push for. So I think it's an incredible opportunity for us to push on that, and that's why really that we haven't just gone, hey, Evercarty, thanks for that, let's improve performance, push it to BTU, push it live, because we want to get it right, and that's why we're utilizing these testing slots to give us that information.
It sounds 100%. Like a great example of how the process is supposed to work. It's you develop small, you do internal testing, then you push it out to the wider group, you get the feedback, you bring it back in.
You don't go further until such a time that you're actually prepared for that. And
they did not go further.
That comes down to everything again, performance. gameplay and the balance.
And for those wondering, how do I become a member of Evocati? It's the Issue Council. Submit your bugs, submit your reports, validate the reports of other people, participation in the Evocati.
So most of the valuable information from this video that we got regarding PvP and how it was meant to work in this game comes from this first talk with Todd Pappy. And I'll replay this middle section here for anybody who came in a little bit late, because this is pretty important. This is like some really key information, the way he described this.
You have to think about how different solar systems are connected to each other. So, and obviously, Stanton is a somewhat lawful system. It's got UEE versus Pyro is supposed to be a very unlawful system, or lawless system. And then, so where players want to be able to find the PvP versus where players don't want to find it, they want to focus more on PvE. I would start there. So they started, what system should I be in? What system, do I want to go to? And
if I'm in Terra, I probably should feel pretty safe. If I'm in Pyro,
correct.
I should be looking over my shoulder.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So, and, with that, it basically comes down to, we'll never be able to 100%, guarantee, hey, you're 100% safe. And frankly, we don't want to do that. And I would put it more on the scale of, let's say, 90 to 10, or, and maybe in a lawless area, it's the complete opposite. It's 10 to 90 kind of thing. So, we never want it to be a 0. We never want it to be 100%. But even then, in Stanton, we still want there to be areas for people to look for PvP. We still want there to be areas that are, mostly geared toward PvE. So it will really just depend on kind of how the player goes about looking for them. And then, are you turning off the monitored zones? Are you, basically out in the middle of nowhere? So, and if so, then yeah, then I think it should happen there. Then we also obviously have like abandoned space stations and Jump Town and these
Korea, the hotspots.
Exactly. So we have certain hotspots, within.
So that's the point of these contested zones, these asteroid bases. These are the hotspots that they're putting in. We have some in Stanton, like he's saying. We've got Ghost Hollow, we've got Jump Town, we've got Korea. I'm sure there will be more that they bring into Stanton, even different places. But these are places that they're specifically trying to make to attract this kind of gameplay. They're not places that they're not indicative of the direction of the game. It's something that was stated all the way back in 2020. So I think, yes, sometimes it can be a little bit weird that they're making these gamified zones where this gameplay is more appropriate. And I think it all depends really on the armistice zones. It depends on how they advertise these areas, how weird or normal they sound in the greater context of Star Citizen. But I think it's key to note that these are the hotspots that they're trying to build in order for this stuff to be more reliably in a place. If you come into the game and you ask somebody, hey, I want to get into like combat, FPS, I want to be able to go and get loot, I want to have some fun fighting people, where should I go? People aren't like, oh, well, just hang around outside space stations and you'll find people. They can be like, yo, there's this space station and this space station. This stars system is where you should probably go and make your home. This is where you can go and like get into more of that gameplay. It just makes it easier to understand how the game works. I don't think it means that they're changing the game to be more PvP or less PvP focused. As he's saying in this video, they want areas that don't have that much combat, and they want areas that have a ton of combat.
The space stations and Jump Town and these
Korea, the hotspots.
Exactly. So we have certain hotspots, within the system that I still think they're 100% valid, and that people should be able to go there and try that out.
It serves a double purpose. It attracts the people looking for it to those places, and it lets the people who want to avoid those places. Yeah,
exactly. And and ideally in the star map in the future, where you kind of see where like hotspots of activity, and then that kind of can gear or at that point in time you can choose your route, with that information. So in the past, I know that we've talked about like a PvP slider, and we're not going to have anything.
So we've gotten to that point, but that's really where I wanted to get there, and this, I think that right there, that explanation from Todd Pappy. Again, this is 4 years ago, so things can always change, but I do think that's still the direction that they're going in. So yeah, PvP in this game. Now we're going to actually listen to what they say about those hotspots. We've got a Q&A here that I'm sure most of you have already listened to, but I have not looked through this yet. So I look forward to hearing what they have to say about these so-called hotspots now 4 years later, when they actually need to consider the in-game design and the gameplay that they've literally built for it, rather than just theory crafting or conceptualizing what might be coming down the line. And I've not really looked at what the responses to this are. I haven't looked at what the answers for the questions. I don't even know what the questions are. So I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about this stuff in this. And I'm sure this will give us also some insight into whether or not they've stuck with those visions and the idea of what PvP in this game will be and where it will take place. Let's get into this Q&A, see what they have to say.
Level designs? You're all level designers. Told you it was a train wreck. Let's start with Con. Hey, Con, tell everybody who you are and what you do for Star Citizen.
Con!
Hey guys, I'm Khan.
Okay, I'm gonna make jokes about. I make joke about Con the name, but I actually have a really pretty close friend named Con, who we just kind of talked to earlier today. Con is a pretty common Turkish name. So is Çakır, which is his last name.
Lead level designer for Star Citizen.
And what does
Wait, I'm not saying Çakır is a common Turkish name. I don't actually know that. Just know it's a Turkish name.
lead level designer do?
A lead level designer manages not a lead, a team of level designers, and work through new initiatives like the contested zones and asteroid stations.
How often is there an annoying American in the office that just does the William Shatner bit with your name?
There it is.
Quite often, but I think the last name is a bit more difficult.
I actually did that to my friend here, Con, and
I've already used up my swear, so I'm not even going to take a try at the second.
it was not received.
John, tell everybody who you are and what you do for Star Citizen.
Oh! Is that Prometheus on his desk? That looks like the Prometheus ship. If it is, that is amazing. I love that ship.
Hi, I'm John. I'm a level designer too, and I tend to do whatever Khan tells me because he's my boss.
What makes it a level designer 2?
I did a good enough job.
For the record, it is spelled K-A-A-N here, rather than
Is that
K-A-H-N.
quantifiable? Is that on paper somewhere?
I mean, obviously there are criteria for promotions.
You guys can't even see that ship.
I was level designer 1 for a couple of years.
Next time Jared's on the
gained
screen, I'll put the
experience to earn that promotion.
I'll hide
So I'm
myself.
level designer 2 now.
Okay. And last, Manuel, tell everybody who you are and what you do for Star Citizen.
Hey, I'm Manuel. I'm a senior level designer, and last I did the implementation for the personal hangars, for the player hangars. But you might also know me from Area 18, Prison, and some other things, and soon asteroid bases.
People might know you from prison. Sounds like a story.
So say, yeah, I saw you about Area 18 all the time.
Oh, you mean Kleischer?
Yes.
Oh. Okay. Senior level designer 2. Which one's where?
I'm 2 steps below John.
Okay. Just
No.
The other way around.
I don't know. No, not that it matters. You guys are. I was in the Frankfurt office to film for this episode a few weeks ago, and you guys have a very collaborative and work environment here, where you were always over at one person's desk or another person's desk, helping each other out. Even during the interviews, some of you sat next to each other during the interviews and helped each other out with the answers and stuff. So
I prefer to be the opposite of helpful when I'm at my coworker's desk. It's fun.
Tight-knit team. Plus, we did that neat ISC even earlier in the season, where we got to meet the team here while you were visiting and talk more about your work and stuff. So, just you guys have.
Boomer, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you, bro. Thanks for the support.
Maybe
Yeah,
I'm mentioning it.
And unlike John, I only do sometimes what Khan wants me to do.
Yeah.
That's the benefit of climbing those ranks. You can start to do your own thing.
Fair enough. All right. So
Exactly.
we've collected some questions from the backers. Let's go ahead and jump right in. These are in no particular orders. These are going to bounce. Our two main topics for this week's show are the new asteroid bases and the encounters within that are scheduled to come for the upcoming Alpha 4.0, and the new contested zones, which are the PvE kind of almost. We hesitate to use the word dungeon experience. It's the
No, I troll Mrs. Tomato all the time, and she does the same to me, as you saw earlier in the stream.
Quite accurate for us that are within the Pyro space stations, and then we'll jump into some generic level design stuff. First question off the bat says, what's the plan for all the new locations so that they do?
Okay, I just realized this is a level designer Q&A, so we might actually not get that much specific news about PvP design, more so than just the design of the locations. But we might still be able to scrap some info from that, so we'll see.
Not end up being quote-unquote boring bunkers with the same missions on a loop over and over and over again.
Who wants to do the honors?
I guess I do it, and starting with the asteroid base bit. I mean, asteroid bases are a bit like bunkers 2.0, more or less like a development. It's in the sense of it's a more condensed space, but we try to segment them a bit more, like in different categories in this regard, like also encounter design, like encounter asteroid bases that we have or that we plan for. Covering more like sandbox mission-y designs. Then we want to have more explorative ones, and then also contested ones that tie more into the contested zone experience that Khan and John are working on. But yeah, we try to cover more different gameplay types, more different player interests or player interests in certain game mechanics or types. So yeah.
Can you give us an example of something? I don't want to go through every aspect of the experience. We just did an ISC on it, but can you give me an example of something that players will do in asteroid bases specifically?
Die.
I mean, if you go to one of the encounter asteroid bases, you can find bodies, you can kill X
literally
amount of guys.
There you go, die.
That's more like for the mission ones, but they will always be populated, so you don't need a mission to go there. You can just go there and check it out yourself. But these are more like the playground for missions. But you can also find other ones that are inhabited, and you can just explore and do puzzles in them. At least that's the plan going ahead.
Yeah, we seriously, dude, of all of the things that they could use these abandoned space station areas and asteroid bases for exploration, please, Lord, please give us some solid things to find, like data pads with stories and things to actually discover in these areas. I would love that. Kinds
of puzzles and treasures to be found.
Yes.
Okay. With contested zones, because these open areas, what's being done to avoid bottlenecks and other obvious camping spots that negatively impact the player experience?
I guess I should go for that one, John Red.
Yeah, so we are. Go.
Okay. We're looking for multiple entry points, like establishing multiple entry points that can come from the interior, but also from the exterior of the station, so that we just don't have one bottleneck. I mean, I guess you kind of spread the options out a bit. We can't fully eliminate the possibility of this, but at least giving players the option and giving them some sense of opportunities in and around the station to enter this contested zone will definitely help it out.
Yeah, exactly. I think whenever you have an
Do you guys remember what the first introduction of these spaces looked like? Because it was really like, it felt really exploration focused, just like super calm. And they advertised that there'd be some PvP and PvE situations, but like, look at this. The atmosphere of this is just so nice. I love the look of this. And this is mainly what they've shown us, but like in the most recent videos, this is all just firefights, you know? A little bit of platforming here and there. Also makes them look a little bit bigger, more vertical. Man, that's such a shorter video than I remember. But I really hope that there's more of those like calm moments to breathe and really just look around and find things in these areas, and not as much of firefights.
Entrance into a place like this where PvP is possible, it naturally creates a bottleneck. You have to be able to enter the space, and there could be people camping that space waiting for you to enter. So what we can do as designers is try and offer alternate paths in, as Khan said. There are side elevators. There are ways in from the exterior of the station. So we're just trying to provide as many different opportunities to enter that space so that it's more difficult to, use those bottlenecks if you are of a griefing mindset.
Yeah. What's also important is that there's like exfiltration points inside these contested zones. So if you hit a specific depth of the contested zone, you can get to a part that offers you a one-way exit that brings you to the social area. So back to practical safety.
Interesting. And you're talking about things that we can do to battle or defeat the bottlenecks and stuff, the camping and stuff like this. But some aspect of that is intentional. Some aspect of that is not a bug; it's a feature. These are still intended to be PvP zones. They are intended to still have a certain level of friction. The balance in all of this is in finding the right level of friction, not eliminating all the friction altogether.
Yeah, that's a tough part of designing a map like this. Definitely.
Yeah,
Finding the
ultimately,
right balance.
Yeah, ultimately it is a PvP space, and griefing, unfortunately, is something you try to design against. But this is a kind of a whole philosophical debate we could get into about griefing versus PvP. But griefing is just PvP ultimately. At the end of the day, there's technically nothing wrong with someone finding a defensible position.
Yo, I cannot believe the for those of you who were at the behind the scenes stream the other day, I had a big debate with them about which exclusive video to release coming up here soon. And so this is the exclusives. If you're a supporter on Patreon or Twitch or YouTube, you have access to all of these videos. They're the exclusive videos that I release every month. And this was the one that I was going to decide to release this month. And it's all about what is griefing and how do they combat it. And it fits so perfectly with this release. I know the comments on this are going to rip my hair out, but wow, it's funny how that conversation has just persisted for 6 months now.
And using that as an advantage over another player. And that aspect of being on the defensive in the PvP kind of equation is you dealing with those kind of bottlenecks and those camping positions. Which cover do you use? How do you approach a room? Do you breach the room? Do you use like grenades to flush out a room before you enter it? Scouting opportunities. And there are things we can do as designers to kind of aid that as well, with like cover placement and lighting and things like that can alleviate these issues. But ultimately you can't get rid of them, and you probably shouldn't, because ultimately this is Pyro and this is a PvP space as well as PvE.
Yeah.
So it's also part of opting in, right? It's just like you want to do PvP, and then that can also spark like new things. Imagine like back then in the days in WoW Classic, right, when Crossroads was raided, and then suddenly you try to ally with some friends or like people and just like try to push back on things. And I think that can be really interesting.
Yeah. We obviously do want to. This is not the place to do a giant griefing versus PvP discussion. We've actually
it is. Let's
done
do it.
that on SCL a number of times. But ultimately, just because I can already see the chat now. Hi, Twitch chat, and I can already imagine the YouTube comments later.
Oh my God, the YouTube comments must be lit.
I think a baseline here is that there has to be an alternative.
You got to scroll down to find the good ones.
Solution available to the player who's being attacked in order to turn the tables. When there's not a solution, when there's not an option that's accessible to that player to continue
to go on and have a good experience, to continue to do the things that they want to do, that's when PvP turns to griefing. When you take away the gameplay experience, not just make it difficult. That's PvP. But it's a fine line, and I think you sit here, we could march a parade of 500 developers in front of this.
The biggest problem that this game faces when it comes to what griefing could be considered is you have to, like, everybody's going to feel like they're, well, okay, not everybody. There's a large amount of people that will feel like they're being griefed if they get attacked in an area where they don't expect to be attacked. If you communicate to somebody that they might get attacked in a certain place, I think, and I don't know how everybody's psychology works, but I think they're much less likely to accuse someone of griefing them if they were already told it could happen. Like when you spawn at Port Tressler and you walk outside and you get shot, you're gonna be like, yo, okay, again, you're not gonna be like this. Somebody might be like, yo, you just shot me out here for no reason. That's griefing. But if you do the same at Grimhex, I think it's like there's much less reason to be angry about it. It's freaking Grimhex, you know? And that scale goes all the way from Pyro to Terra, which is where this thumbnail comes from. Literally, Pyro to Terra is my scale for what is considered hardcore PvP encouragement area versus a high security area where you would expect to be more safe. And I think that's like, they really, 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 really got to focus on how they communicate that to players as soon as they get into the game, throughout playing the game, all these things. Like, you really have to keep banging it into the player's head that, like, you could be in danger here. You are fairly safe here. You should not go here. You shouldn't have come here. Skyrim reference. Or is that Oblivion? It's like one of the Elder Scrolls games.
Camera, you probably hear a solid 400 different answers about what that is. So for those of you who are already working up your YouTube videos and stuff saying CIG says this or CIG says that, that's not what's happened now. We're hearing a couple people express some individual opinions on what the difference is. And again, I promise if you brought 400 people in here, you get 300 different answers. So it's, at the end of the day, it's about our job here in this situation, this is me where I'll put on the CIG hat and speak on behalf of CIG here. Our job in those situations is to find alternatives for the players who are suffering at the hands of PvP. Find ways that they can counter it, provide ways that they can counter it, provide alternatives that still provide the same experience, other places where they can go, other things like turrets and things like factions, that NPC factions that can come in and help defend, to find the things that can help. When a player runs out of options and the only thing they can do is be killed over and over and over again.
They really gotta, that's super freaking important, the security thing. They're not necessarily making things so PvP oriented. They're making things with the possibility of PvP, but it feels PvP oriented because, again, the game can't account for it yet. They don't have the security systems. Like he just said, there's not turrets to protect you. There's not NPCs that will come out and defend you. There aren't deterrents to stop people from engaging in stuff in the places they're not necessarily supposed to engage with it. There's also just not that much risk. Like, if I wanted to, I could just go on a murder spree while we're here on stream and kill everybody coming out of Port Tressler. And what's the worst that happens to me? I get sent to prison for a few hours? Even if I'm losing my stuff, it doesn't matter that much right now because we're in this alpha version where I can, like, I can just cheese everything and get some money back, you know? It doesn't play like a real game should right now. So it feels like everything is being made specifically for people who want to go and fight, as opposed to just being made more open-ended so there's still the possibility of fighting. Our hopeful goal is that reputation does have a part of it, but it's also a lot about the security systems that aren't in the game yet. Like, players should technically be able to bring their weapon into the city, but if somebody sees them with the weapon, they should get arrested, right? And that weapon can be taken away. They never get it back again. Well, then which weapon do you really want to bring in and risk getting taken away? And that's why the communication's important, because they have to be able to tell a player, don't go into this city with a weapon or it'll be taken away. tell the other players, you can go into this city and you won't be safe, but nobody has weapons, so you should be good. That kind of stuff. There's a lot of details that they have to fill in there to make that matter. But ultimately, the point is to allow for the possibility of those things to happen, allow for a bounty hunter to have the license to carry in the city, while also limiting everybody else, so that there's a whole point of being a bounty hunter with a high bounty hunter rep that the city allows to go in and do whatever you want, because they trust you. And then if you kill someone, that all should get wiped away.
That's where there's a problem. So, I said some friction is intended, but
then they strangle you.
We're talking about contested zones and asteroid bases. How widely spread are these contested zones and asteroid bases around the Pyro system? The Pyro system is pretty darn big. So what are we talking about as far as how far these are spread?
So currently we are planning for about 5 contested zones, and these are in a few stations, all pretty evenly spread along the Pyro system. But some of them being in very specific places that are only be able to be accessed once you progress to a specific stage, or once you have actually gained a couple items, you can get to that location and unlock the interior, basically. So contested zones might not be immediately accessible to the player. There's some that will require you to complete others to then find the keys to others, basically, or to specific branches within these contested zones. So it's a mix and match a bit.
Okay.
I'm really interested in testing these out.
Is there anything intended or planned that would start you in one contested zone and make you go to another contested zone to finish or complete? Or
yeah, there's... Sorry?
I said, or are they just contained experiences within each one?
So we have a short-term kind of branch, for example. We have a mid-term and a long-term one.
Yeah, like send these to your insurance. I'm sure it'll go well.
To find specific ingredients in other places to be able to access that long-term branch, right? And whilst short-term or mid-term ones are there to complete the dungeon itself, or basically go in there and do some farm runs or loot runs. Yeah.
Gotcha. So there's not going to be too much advantage to just holding up in one. You're not going to be able to complete the ultimate objectives of these contested zones by just staying put in one place and holding it forever. Okay.
You will have to go to
camping's my best strategy, though.
Progress.
Yeah, you might do it to take away somebody else's enjoyment, but you won't gain anything as far as the progression for your character and stuff by doing so.
Yeah.
Okay. With asteroid bases, will there be asteroid bases without enemy NPCs or non-violent gameplay as well? For example, scavenging, environmental puzzles, rescue missions.
Solid question.
Is there something to do in asteroid bases for players who just want to bring peace to the galaxy?
I'm not sure about peace, but yes, certainly. The current intention and goal we have in developing these is, like, as previously touched on a bit before, the encounter ones are solely the sandbox environment for the whole mission stuff. So people who want to engage in missions and want to engage in combat and do these things. But I also want to have this, like, more safer spaces. I mean, you can't...
that would be the whole point of them bringing these kinds of places into Stanton, right? Abandoned space stations in Stanton would probably be a lot safer for you to go and just explore. You might have people still camping there to get you, but there's that. You know, I had this theory, actually, that Pyro coming into the game would lead to more players who are interested in being pirates living in Pyro more, which would bring less piracy to Stanton, but would also mean the people who were better at being pirates, who are more skilled at evading the law and, like, taking on well-equipped players, would be the ones who stay in Stanton. So, like, you would decrease the level of piracy in Stanton, but increase the skill level of those pirates. I don't know if that'll actually happen, but I think that would be a really interesting little effect if something like that happened when you bring in Pyro.
And PvP from happening, obviously, but the exploration ones are more dedicated to solving puzzles and finding like rewards by entering rooms that are not so obviously like enterable, right? Like you have to do some things, not hack a door, but find means around the space and then get more like higher rewards in there. So yes, that's like no NPCs and anything is planned in there.
Manuel, can you give me a big like heroic pose, something like this, real quick? There you go.
Thumbnail.
Everybody, screenshot that and with the words "I don't know about peace" underneath that. I'd like to see that on Reddit before the end of the show, please. Are there plans, or does the tool set allow for the creation of non-derelict asteroid bases, whether functional or productive? Like, could they be seen in a system like Stanton, but is abandoned, or inhabited the mooring? Oh, dude, they're going way into the lore there. The mooring like Nyx. So basically, can we make asteroid bases that aren't just run down, beat up, abandoned places? Is what they're asking.
I mean, yes, the whole concept of asteroid bases is quite expandable and it has lots of potential because it's a very small scale and doesn't need that much development time like a big flagship location. It's not for the initial release right now, so we are focusing more on the free archetypes that we are currently looking into. But there's certainly a lot of potential and stuff we would like to do going forward in the future and expanding on social space.
Tell us the archetypes
as well.
Okay, if he's not going to say it, I'll bring up what I know of archetypes. There's not. I'm betting it has changed since this slide because so much has, and this slide seems like it's very lore based. But here are the building archetypes we know of in Star Citizen so far. Where is this picture? It's here somewhere. I know it's around the bottom. It's an older one. I've got some winners in here. Here's the 4.0 slide from 2016. Also the 3.0 one. The 3.1 slide is a very honorable mention. Oh, also this. This is a good one. You guys will see this in a video I release later this year. That's a classic. But we're looking for archetypes. Building archetypes. Where are you? Where the heck? There we go. Okay. Building archetypes. So far, so this is like the entire history of Star Citizen. We are here, which is now. This is like when they first started traveling. The first archetype ever to be made was Utilitarian 2125, and it consists of mechanical and industrial aesthetics, functional over form, durable. This is what defines the ArCorp and Hurston sort of stuff. So the outposts we have in Stanton, ArCorp Area 18, Lorville at Hurston, and the rest stops we have are all utilitarian. The next one is colonialism. Frontier vibe, use of natural resources, derelict archetype. So this is like the derelict outpost we have in Stanton, as well as the new outposts that are coming in Pyro we've been seeing, with all of like the stone construction and stuff. This, I don't really know what else this could refer to, but those are the two we know. But you can see there are also several other archetypes they have planned for the game. High tech is used a little bit in Microtech and Orison, I believe. And you can also see the example itself here is a Rayari lab, which we do have a couple of those. Industrial design focus, advanced manufacturing, beautiful functionality. Then you have super modernism, Henoism. This would be what you find in the Castra system, more based on bunkers and defense, and it's military oriented. You got metaclassicism, which this should be really interesting to see. This kind of gives me some of those large-scale cyberpunk vibes a little bit. And then you have Streamline, which looks like it's everything that is made to spread fast and just be plotted down on planets. So they have several different archetype styles throughout this game. And really what they're trying to do is build the tools and the assets to have all of these archetype styles available to them so they can eventually just start mixing them together in different systems based on what they want the system to feel like. Stanton is a mix of utilitarian with some of the form over function design, but also the high tech because it is a newer system. Whereas Castor would be Henoism and Pyro is more colonialism because it's on the frontier. So this is at least architectural art style. I don't know exactly what he was referring to there, but it's a little bit of what we know already. The archetypes are mentioned in the first question and are encounter, explorative, and contested. I see. So they're talking about functional archetypes as opposed to art style archetypes. Well, fun little history deep dive anyways.
Yeah, one thing when
You guys keep listening. I'm going to the bathroom.
aspects that we envisioned was for refueling. Like, instead of needing a large station, you could have these asteroid bases like strategically placed around where you could, for example, refuel, rearm. So we definitely envision this as an expandable feature. But
Yeah.
it's something we want to do.
In ISC just yesterday, which was about the more social aspects, not the combat stuff. But we mentioned that, the Pyro system is so much bigger than Stanton, that the distances between planets are such that having to strategically figure out where you can stop and refuel along the way just to get to the outer ends of the solar system is a important part. And that's what you just mentioned is a great kind of follow-up thing. I mean, obviously we've been adding to the Stanton system for years and years and years. We'll continue to add to the Pyro system after the release of 4.0, and that's an easy consideration. Well, maybe there's an asteroid base gas station there, and that'll help deal with a stress point along that travel route and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's more interesting.
That's where you
as well.
sit as a pirate.
We have these gigantic stations, but when you travel down the motorway in the middle of nowhere, you hit a little gas station, and I think there's some fun there. There's some different kind of style and aesthetic we could use, a different experience than having to go into a station and everything that comes with that. Yeah.
Okay. What else we got? Let's go back to contested zones for a little bit. We talked a little bit about this with sometimes you have the direct route out, but
Tamsa's 300 AU. Jesus.
How will we be able to extract something from the contested zones if people spawn right next to it and are back in 1 to 2 minutes after we kill them? It sounds super annoying to deal with.
Yeah.
So we obviously have considered that, and
have you?
I'd like to hope so. So the way that the contested zones is, by design, the deeper you go, the better rewards there are to find. And if, for example, you encountered a PvP situation, or you yourself were killed by a PvE encounter, getting back to where you were.
Somebody say tacos? What the Echo? What?
Or you yourself were killed by a PvE encounter.
Oh, Vasson said tacos. Where are you guys? Okay, whatever, guys. Chat.
Getting back to where you were is not so straightforward. It's not just a case of a 1-2 minute run in. If you were, deep within the contested zone. Not to mention that, you'd have to rearm yourself. I mean, you could run in with your suit and a pistol. But will you be able to successfully get back to your body if you don't equip yourself well? And similarly, if in a PvP situation, if you kill someone, you succeed in PvP, you take their stuff, are they going to pop up a minute later? I doubt it. Within the contested zone, not only are there traps, hazards, lots of PvE enemies that will be respawning. So even if you cleared out and your path behind you, they're going to be respawning in like you would see in a typical dungeon. You also have exfiltration routes available to you, as Khan said earlier. So, you could decide that person might be coming back for you again. They might turn up, in 5 minutes and 10 minutes. They might bring friends. Now's my time to get out. I'm going to head for that exfiltration route, leave, get back to the social space.
So this seems to be basically confirming that you will be able to have you're going to have a spawn location on the same space station. I don't know, man. I don't know about being able to respawn on space stations in Pyro. It's a little bit weird. Yeah, I don't know. But I guess respawning all the way back in Stanton, at some point, it needs to be just there are people who have ships in the system that are offering respawn services to everybody else. But I guess until we have that kind of technology in the game, then this could be a temporary thing. I hope that they talk about that, though. Respawn locations in space stations. Why is that weird? Because Pyro is really run down. And the respawning technology is fairly new in terms of what happens in the game. And I know they don't have to do everything by lore. But it's I don't know. It kind of falls in line with the fact that they also talk about Cryastro doing your refueling and repair in these like outposts that have no central power. It feels a little bit strange in the system itself, but for the sake of the game, I guess having spawn locations in the station makes sense. Maybe if they were limited a little bit, it needs to be limited to some amount, but we'll see. We'll see how they balance it out and how they try to implement it.
And take my loot home. So this is something that we obviously want to see play out. We want to see how players, in testing.
I would think that the people in Pyro would respawn in locations that offer respawn services. So Endeavors, Apollos, and other places that have their own respawn beds that are transporting that technology into the system and offering those services to people, as opposed to the space stations that are owned by gangs that might not even really like you.
And if any changes are required, we'll look to do that. But I think the design currently will hopefully avoid that.
Someone in the chat asked if there was a Lightsmith asked will there be multiple ways in and out. Yes, we mentioned that earlier in the show, Lightsmith. You can watch the replay up on YouTube if you missed that earlier information. You keep mentioning traps, and this was even during the the filming for the last ISC. Every time you say traps, I keep imagining like a classic Dungeons and Dragons mimic, like a thing that looks like a treasure chest, looks like an item box, and then it explodes and sprays gas at you and kills you. I don't know if we've got time to squeeze it in, but would you guys, for me, consider some explosive item boxes that look like, oh look, there's loot in there?
I think I can speak for everyone when I say that we would love to develop a whole range of traps and hazards. We are implementing ones that we have currently, like trip mines, explosive canisters, hazard zones, radiation, fire. But a mimic chest would be amazing.
Yeah, it can't just be. There's nothing you can do about it. Like we got to be able to scan it. There's got to be a way to detect it and stuff and avoid it. You can't just be random. Oh well, I did nothing and blew myself up. But for the people who are in too big a hurry and don't do the due diligence, those people deserve to have a box blow up in their face. Is what I'm saying.
I mean, hey, maybe it's like a weird alien creature, right? And it's taking on the form of a chest.
I was about to say
one with stream.
Yes, have a face hugger, right?
Yep.
Implement something in you, and then you die in the next one trying to loot your body. Suddenly it bursts open.
Dave, what do you think the over/under are that I can convince Damien DeVoe to create a mimic, like an actual creature? Maybe, okay. All right. I'm not gonna say it's gonna happen, but it's now my new mission in life, and I don't care about the show, so I'm just gonna go do that. Bye.
Thank you.
What group sizes are contested zones designed around?
The whole server, all 50 of us.
Yeah. We definitely, you can do it solo, but we wouldn't recommend that. Like John just said earlier, these are really PvP, PvE-centric spaces. Even if where there were no players in your vicinity, you'll still face quite the challenge. So our recommendation is to at least go with one friend. We are currently envisioning or in our test at least, we are going in by 5 player groups, with a recent test also involving another group. So, but yeah, we're seeing it to be able to scale up to 40 players per dungeon.
Now, you said this isn't the first time you said they can be soloed. Has anybody ever actually? Are you talking about like technically, like the way that the inside of a ship can technically catch fire if the temperature outside is hot enough? You're saying it can technically be done, or has there actually been somebody through testing that has managed to just run through the whole thing by themselves?
Did anyone? I don't think I did. Did you, John?
It's difficult. Initially, in the earlier sections, I think it's doable. It's if you're good enough, it's manageable. But we do scale up. Like
Holmes, they're
enemies,
making these places sound big,
and the intention is that you might need to bring some help.
like distribution center big.
Sometimes if the AI is broken, you can do it.
Yeah, bad server maybe. Yeah.
A combination of letters and numbers followed by Ages Inquisitor in the chat says, this cannot be live. It's way too professional.
Oh.
What effing show are you watching?
Hey, that's a good
I mean, I appreciate the compliment.
yeah, like it's a good compliment.
I feel like I'm a nervous mess right now. Okay.
Obviously, we knew that message was going to be sent, and we responded because this is recorded.
John, is that your mom? Sages Inquisitor, your mom? Will asteroid bases appear as quantum markers always, or is exploration stuff necessary to travel to them?
No, it's they will be always there, always present for you. As said, you can also go to them if there's no mission running, even the mission sandboxy ones, the encounter asteroid bases. You can travel there without requiring a mission. There will be AI population regardless. It's the mission stuff will add on top of that. But
yeah, I feel like
you can see from the get-go.
I feel like we really, really, really need to have substantial locations that don't have quantum markers in this game. And I would think that Pyro would be the place for that, but maybe they want to wait until scanning is more updated. Please mention that.
Be plans for the future.
That's what I wanted to get at. That's certain. You're speaking about how it is in 4.0 in our initial release. Anybody that can remember the initial release of the PU, the stand system, back in late November, early December 2015.
December 20.
And you look at that version of the stand system versus the version of the stand system you have now. Obviously, these things change. These things grow over time. Pyro will be no different.
Yeah.
Even as we continue to add star system after star system after star system after that, our intention is never to abandon the previous ones. There are new stuff coming to Stanton in 4.0. We haven't gotten to talking about that yet.
What?
But,
say it again.
New stuff coming to Stanton in 4.0.
Say it again for me.
Never to abandon the previous ones.
One more time.
There are new stuff coming to Stanton in 4.0.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. I know it's just talk, but that's good to know. That's good to hear. I doubt it's going to be anything super substantial, but we just talked on the podcast, me and Astropub were just talking about how long is it going to take for them to start bringing some of these improvements back to Stanton. That's good.
Talking about that yet, but it'll be on ISC in a couple of weeks. But 4.0 isn't just all Pyro and we forget Stanton. So we're talking about Pyro as it is in 4.0, but obviously as we continue to introduce more exploration-based ships, everybody knows the Zeus is on the public roadmap coming up here in a future release. One of the variants for that is an exploration-based stuff. People here are very keen to start developing exploration-based stuff, like discovering transient jump points, finding an asteroid base, or maybe even a derelict space station that nobody's found before and stuff like this. Those stuff will become more prevalent as the footprint gets larger. The footprint of the game gets larger and larger, and we're all very excited to.
Okay, I think he's basically saying that, like, they will have places that you have to scan down. They're just waiting for scanning to get better, and that's me completely retaking what he said and translating it into what I want to hear. That's not confirmed, but I think that's probably what's going to happen. Probably, again, this is me theory crafting. Okay, this is one of those times, but that sounds like the case.
To do that. So not in 4.0, but...
No, not yet. But we have lots of ideas internally, and we really would love to expand and iterate on it. And
we're great at ideas here.
Right. Another asteroid base question. So we mentioned that some of the asteroid bases had copians inside. Are these placeholders later to be replaced by more
copians or copium?
Features? Oh, this person's calling you out.
Oh.
Apparently they don't agree copians should be in asteroid bases. Thoughts?
I think they can make narrative sense in there, right? You can have domesticized copians, right?
Like the gangs own them.
As far as I know, right? We have like variants.
Yeah, we actually have a domesticated variant. Yeah, pet copian basically.
That makes
they
sense.
just look feral right now, so that will be like more fitting looking. But I don't think
it's like Mordor.
Stretch that they can like narratively be around there. But yeah, I mean, if we have like more fitting creatures as well in the future, that's it. But for now, it's like what we have, what we are working with, right? Is human NPCs and then the Copians. So we try to utilize what we have to create more variety and like more interesting combat with the ingredients that we have.
Yeah.
Manuel voiced interest to have a space cow in an asteroid base.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Who wants some milk?
We don't really talk about it for the rest of the season, but the domesticated Copians are one of the new aspects that are coming online with 4.0. These are domesticated for NPCs and stuff. We're not stealthily adding pet gameplay to players just yet.
They're attack dogs essentially. We have them in contested zones, and the narrative idea is that they have been breeding them and training them, and they will attack you. So as you engage a group of outlaws, there could be a couple of attack Copians that they have.
That makes sense, and that's also actually really
You're
nice.
not just dealing with human enemies now. You also have these fast-moving, low creatures that are attacking your ankles.
Yeah,
and
that's like
adds a whole new aspect.
a much higher variety in combat encounters.
Copians that react to NPCs. There are entities that they don't attack that are friendly to them, that can issue commands and stuff. This is all a step closer to what I could already see some of you are already thinking, pet and player ownership of stuff. That's not to say that you'll be able to own a Copian specifically. It's not to say that you don't. It's to say I don't know the answer. But I know that there has not been a week in the last 3 months where I haven't heard either CR or Rich mention something about we got to get pets in there and stuff. So this is the next step towards that.
Whenever they bite you, you get an extra dose of cope. It's good stuff.
As he said,
Yeah, hit me
I
up.
think we can narratively explain why there are Copians on the abandoned asteroid bases. I think it would be a shame to remove them just to lessen the encounter variety. And I definitely agree that it would be cool to get those creatures, like the mimic facehugger chest we talked about. These kind of alien creatures that
See you later, Wookie.
see on asteroid bases in the future would be amazing. But for now, I think they do offer something useful.
I said nothing about facehugger. That was all you.
Nope, that's you.
I
Your name's on it.
just wanted a little chest that killed people. I didn't say anything about.
It has to hug your face.
That was you.
That's what they do, right?
The views and opinions of Joe do not represent those. All right, next question. Will some contested zones vary in terms of difficulty and overall loot? For instance, one station having relatively fewer enemies and loot compared to another with an abundance of heavily armored enemies and very valuable loot.
Yes, we are alternating some of this based on the contested zone you're in. We also have a very specific one, which we call the Ghost Arena, but don't really want to spoil that yet.
I like surprises.
At the same time, so for us, what is really important when it comes to the reward stuff is that things are actually substantial and unique. What we put in there has to not be widely available, right? So, and that's the thing that we want to really balance out with the rest of the universe to make it worthwhile and to balance it also out between the contested zones themselves.
Yeah, I think anybody who's played Star Citizen for a while knows that I'm just going to call it weird. It was one of the weird limitations of the mission system and the game itself was the inability to distribute rewards, in-game rewards to players. It's one of those things that somehow with the development of everything else and whatnot, it was just always we'll get to it, and we just never seem to get to it. In 4.0 and beyond, a big chunk of the mission feature team, the stuff like this, has now been going to adding that functionality in there, so that now you saw it with the with the Operation Overdrive and stuff. Now there are things you can do in game and now get rewarded for an item in game. So that kind of technology expands and continues into asteroid bases, into contested zones, and into things like Ghost Arena that we're not going to talk about.
The first place that they actually started really talking about that happening was in here with the cargo stuff.
branded clothing. There will be collectibles to decorate your hab, hangar, or ship, or you can put them anywhere you want. And there'll be more exclusive rewards that we'll be revealing later. Thank you.
So like this clearly isn't in 324.
For perks, you'll get access to more items in shops and discounts on specific items. And all of these rewards and perks you need to earn in the game. You cannot just buy them.
Hear how happy that makes everybody. People think Star Citizen people are just a cult that wants to buy everything. No. Just ships. No, but really, that is something they started talking about with cargo, and clearly it's not in the game yet. So it's the mission features team is working on that, whereas they already got the cargo missions into the game. So it keeps getting talked about. We'll see when it happens.
So you're going to see more and more unique things that are rewarded to you through playing the game as development continues to 4.0 and beyond and stuff like that. And that's really exciting because I think if I can speak, normally I'm speaking for the devs, but if I can speak for the fans for a while, I think this sense of progression, the sense of I'm doing things and I'm earning things that I can't get anywhere else. It's like this has been missing from the game for a little while. So it's one of the more exciting aspects to me of 4.0 is this work that we're talking about today, the contested zones and the asteroid bases, because to me, this seems like the birth of the very beginnings, the birth of actual player progression to something greater. And I'm really excited about that. So I hope that's coming across in the ISC in this. And if it's not, I'm sorry, I tried. Next question. What's the ghost thing? Stop being a weenie. Just tell us.
The ghost thing?
Nah, let it live.
The ghost.
Supernatural elements.
What's it called?
Ghost Arena.
Ghost Arena.
Oh, that one. I guess. How should I describe it? Do you know Running Man? I guess you do,
Okay,
right?
that's all we'll say. That's enough.
Okay.
That's enough. Cool. I love Running Man.
Wait, Running Man like from DayZ?
One main objective, or are there different areas with things to gain from each of them?
Yes. So this ties into what Khan was just saying in terms of progression and rewards. On the kind of smaller scale of a singular contested zone, we do also have a bit of variety in what you can do.
Right, the movie, duh.
We kind of have broken it into 3 areas. So you have like a short-term goal where you just want to go into a contested zone, you just want to get some loot, kill some enemies, and get out. And that's kind of one quick play style we're looking at. A second one is that maybe you want to complete the entire contested zone, so get to the final reward room, complete the entire thing, and that takes a little bit more effort and maybe coordination and maybe some help. For example, like we have these security doors that require keys, specific keys that you'll have to find from within the dungeon to be able to progress into the deeper parts. So that's kind of a second playstyle that we're envisioning. And the third one is, as Khan said, this overall progression where you now have to engage with multiple contested zones, with asteroid bases, and kind of go along this whole flow. And all the rewards are scaled to kind of the effort involved in each of those.
Sounds like a playground, to be honest. Sounds like they're going to use this system to test a lot of different ideas they have for more of the neutral areas in Star Citizen.
You know, Mop Spear, if you believe in yourself and you work hard, all things are possible. Except that. Will asteroid bases have any enclosed docks that would handle a capital class ship? For example, a capital class
Holy
hangar
crap.
with atmosphere, but with an enclosed zero gravity space. But this is a really specific question. Yeah. Will you make this very specific thing for this very specific person?
So I probably have to disappoint.
Capital class
in
hangar.
this regard. So the initial set of asteroid bases we are putting out, right? We don't do social spaces, so there's no official landing, so no hangars or landing pads services whatsoever, right? So that will come down later down the line. And even then, if we add the more smaller social spaces like gas stations and so on, It's probably more to serve smaller, medium-sized ships, probably not the big capital-sized ships. We might have docking tubes at some of them later on, so that could be your only access point if that's supported for your ship, but probably not. I mean, if you buy in the ship, right, like then you have certain stations available to you. That's the fantasy, right? So,
Yeah. During the ISC, let's back up. Over the course of the development of this game, we've seen a lot of procedural tools done. The Rastar and stuff that can generate certain layouts for different space stations and everything. In the ISC, we specifically mentioned that the asteroid bases were not procedural. Can you talk to us about why that change was made? Why are the asteroid bases created bespoke? There's that word. There's actually an appropriate reason to use that word there, people. So, you can drink if you want to, but
bingo cards, everybody.
Why did we do these by hand instead of using the procedural tools?
I think there's always a balance to be had with how much you do stuff procedural versus how much you want to control the general flow of things. So we're talking like procedural, like in our terms, is used to be a lot like you stitch a room one by one together based on kind of some parameters and logic. But that kind of eliminates our ability to handcraft an experience that flows throughout a multi-room setup, right? So what we're looking at right now instead is hand stitching certain sections together that can combine into kind of like a gameplay bubble, and then utilizing multiple gameplay bubbles that we can then stitch together with this procedural tool, right? So we have a bit more control on the scale of things that is a bit larger than just a room, but accommodates for multiple rooms basically.
And that's in line with things we've said before. I mean, there are other games out there who very famously everything is procedural, and some of the struggle of that is that nothing is really unique because of that.
If everything is procedural,
I'm not talking about the one you're
nothing
thinking. I'm talking about
is
another
procedural.
One back from like 2017, 2018. We've always said that we use procedural generation as a tool, not an ends. We use it to help us move forward. We use it to help us flesh out, but as not just the sole creation of a thing. Because we have, and I think if we've demonstrated anything in the 11 years that ISC, ATV, and everything's been around and stuff like this, is that we have an incredible team of artists. Not just the 3D artists, the 2D artists, the tech artists, the animators. There's all kinds of stuff that gets us.
Art is Star Citizen's biggest
we're never going
weapon.
I can't see
in the
us
arsenal
ever just fully handing that over to procedural generation, generative AI, anything else. We might use these things as tools, again, to help flesh out the other areas once we've designed the critical path and the second critical path and the third critical path, and just using it to flesh out some stuff, as you said. But that's been a hallmark. That's been what we've been saying about procedural tools from the very beginning. So it's nice to see that or here anyway, that it's still the case. Will we be able to manipulate the environment of contested zones, like turn on and off gravity, life support, turrets?
There we go.
Stuff like that.
That's a good one.
Not right now from the get-go,
No.
right? It's something that can become more interesting once resource network hits.
Whoa.
So yeah, not initially. Though that said, we have doors with keycards. So there's and fuses. So there's some elements where you can already manipulate, but I guess what players might have more in mind with these systems that you can manipulate, like power resources and all these things, we'd really love to implement them once we have the systems available to us.
Now,
that sucks.
You said something there, and I want to make sure that we get some clarity on that. At this moment,
That means Resource Network isn't in the dev branch, so they can't use it in their own creations because they have to wait until the feature is far enough along that the rest of the company can use it, not just the people working on it. Maybe. Possibly.
the moment that we're recording, what day is this? Friday. What's the date?
The 6th
Is that what they said in the monthly
As of
report?
Friday, August 16th, Resource Network is scheduled for release in 4.0. These things are scheduled for release in 4.0. When Manuel says when that stuff is in, when that stuff's ready, he means when it's up and running and functional for him to utilize it in the design of this experience. Because these experiences are being developed concurrently. And so like this, we can't have them sitting around waiting. You can't have asteroid bases sitting around waiting for work on Resource Network to come along. So the first version will use little pieces of it, like you said, the key cards and the fuses and stuff like that. But as things progress, 4 whatever after that, it's like this. Then as the feature hardens and gets more developed and stuff, we'll be able to utilize more and more aspects of that. You've already seen, if you watched ISC yesterday, some of the locations teams are already using aspects of the resource networking system for their charge and drain stuff and for the different homesteads and habitats and stuff like that. So it's just a question of, do we want to wait, or do we want to put out a first version that can do all of these other things and then add that later? And that's what he's talking about here. So,
exactly. I think it would be, or like we all think it would be a shame holding on with the asteroid bases and contested zones. It's already a playable content that works without the resource network already, right? So it's like, why wait? Get it out in the hands of players, have them play. Also getting feedback, right, and see like how players engage with the environment and how we can improve upon that. And then we already have also ideas like how we can implement or like add in the future once the systems are more refined.
Eagle 6. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add on a little bit as well. I think it's worth adding that we have definitely viewed the contested zone asteroid bases a little differently to past things we've put out. We want these locations to kind of stand alone, like as themselves, be a bit more sandboxy and have more interactable elements in them. And the resource network that will eventually come is a part of that. But things like the key cards and the security doors and traps and we're trying to push more of that into the environment to make them kind of be more standalone and exist as a space that you can interact with and have gameplay in. Yeah.
That's a bummer that these locations aren't going to use Resource Network, though. I was really hoping they'd be included since they're developed in parallel.
But there's lots of disclaimers because I've been doing this for 10 years and there's nothing there, honest to God, the absolute worst thing in my entire life. Yeah, I'm not going to qualify that. It is the worst thing in my life, is watching somebody take something from one of my programs and misunderstand it. Not maliciously. Not the people who twist things because they're looking for clicks.
I wonder how many times I've done that.
But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the good, the good people who simply heard something and took it a certain way, and that's not the way it's going to be. And then I watch that person get excited. I watch that person get excited, and I watch that person get hyped. I watch that person get so hopeful for a thing that's not actually going to happen the way that they think we said it, because we didn't take 10, 15, 20 seconds.
Jared said, Terra's coming in 4.0. Yeah.
To clarify it, to disclaimer it. So yeah, there are about 20 or so disclaimers and clarifications on SCL every week, and that's part of my responsibility, not just to you but to the developers, to make sure that the things that they say are properly understood and in the proper context. And if I didn't, there'd probably be 3 more people in the chat jumping on me for not clarifying. So I'll take the hit. I'll take the little hit for, there's too many disclaimers and whatnot, because ultimately the alternative's far worse. All right. We've been sort of dancing around this, and I don't know how much you're going to be able to get into it, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you. What kind of rewards are there from the contested zones? Is there a shared PvP mission item to recover, or are there loot small enough to carry in a backpack, example? Obviously, we don't want to spoil everything. We still want some level of discovery, but as
Treasure.
much as you can share. What are
Treasure.
people working towards?
The good booty.
I guess I can give some examples. So, for the first part, what kind of rewards you're gonna get is our first step is to make things unavailable, like widely unavailable, something that you just can't not get from the shops in Stanton or in Pyro. It has to be something that is only be retrievable right here. And what we're looking at right now, after talking with system design about it and other people, is that ship components are one of the big steps like that. Like military, stealth class, or even competition class ship components will be made exclusive in some capacity, certain parts of it, and only be widely available or
certain variants of them.
available. Yeah, exclusively available in reward rooms or in the final. Let's call it the grand prize.
Yeah. I'm going to stop you there. That's plenty.
Okay.
We don't want to share everything, but yes, I'm taking next week off, and then I'm in Germany the following week to film with Torsten and the gang there about resource networking. And one of the neat talking points, and I think I feel like I actually said this last week, but I'll say it this week too. You might remember an old series of articles that John Crew and I wrote back when I was a community manager, 2016, 2017. I've been a community manager in 5 or 6 years. But back then we wrote a series of articles for the website called The Shipyard, where we broke down basically the overall plan for how ships are supposed to work. And one of the things we talked about there was the classifications of materials, not just in quality, but in type, military, competition, luxury, stuff like that. So this, along with Resource Network, and I'm not going to go into it too much here because we've got the episode coming, is the beginning of that realization of multiple ship components that are actually tuned to different abilities and tuned to different performance thresholds and stuff. So after 4.0 is where the world of, okay, my M50 behaves like this, but I'm going to rip this out and I'm going to rip this out and I'm going to go do a contested zone. I'm going to get this. I'm going to pop that in. I'm going to go to an asteroid base and get this. I'm going to pop that in. And now my M50 behaves differently than the stock thing that comes off the market. 4.0 is where the start of that begins to happen. And I'm, like I said, it's the co-author of the Shipyard articles with John Crew so many years ago. It's one of those things that I've been waiting, which is why you brought it up, so I'm gonna be like,
Yeah, it's a good and a bad thing. It's a little sketchy if there are no other ways to get those things. Mission rewards, locations in Stanton where you might be able to find those things. The weird off shop in some random outpost someone remember in Pyro. But if you can only get these components from these locations, that's a little iffy. And I know they're doing this as a test. This isn't like a permanent thing, so it'll probably change the way you can get these components. This is basically them. Yeah, that seems like a hardcore test for this kind of stuff rather than a permanent change. But for the time period that this is true, a little iffy. Why would it be iffy? Because the only way to get these components is by going to these two types of locations, and you don't have a really high chance of knowing what exactly you're getting. Like, are you going to grind asteroid bases until you get a power plant because you keep getting quantum drives? And you can only grind in those two places. I would love to see that be spread out a little bit more, to be different ways for people to get this kind of stuff, and not just specifically the uncontested zones or the contested zones and asteroid bases. We'll have to see how they implement that, though, and what it applies to.
excited about it. All right.
Crafting would be, obviously, yeah, crafting would be a great way, too.
That was just enough. You did good, Con. Tell us everything else. No, I'm just kidding.
You can always buy those loot items off of other people, but let me ask this. If this is an official game-supported way of getting them, is buying those items off of people also going to be an official supported way of doing it? We don't really have a great player trading system. So I'm thinking there should be multiple ways to get this stuff. If it's going to be behind a gameplay aspect, it would make sense to me for there to be more than just one way to do it. Specifically because it's ship components. If they were going to say this is like a certain type of weapon or something, or there's something specific that you're going in there for, then that's one thing. But if you're locking an entire class of components behind just going into two types of locations, that seems a little iffy. When I say iffy, I don't mean wrong. I don't mean they're wrong and they should burn in hell and that they're doing everything wrong. I'm saying, oh, this seems a little bit iffy and I'd like to see how it goes. Don't lose your panties.
The second part of the question about how we extracted freight elevators. It's not just going to be backpacks or something that you can carry, right? There's going to be freight elevators inside this zone that are positioned in a way where you can extract certain things in a more efficient manner.
Okay. Corn44's TV says, say it again, I wasn't listening.
Sorry?
Nothing, I'm just...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll have more ways to get the components in the future. Like I said, this is them testing a system. This is temporary. This is temporary. This is temporary. Hey everybody. Getting your attention. This is temporary, okay? I'm not saying this is wrong. Listen, here. This is temporary. This is one way that they're testing to do this. And during that time that they're testing it, it can be iffy.
A solid low-level troll. Are asteroid bases, as gameplay locations, a precursor in test for player-owned asteroid bases, or are there no connections to be drawn? Careful.
Not yet, at least.
Manuel?
No, not yet, at least at the moment. So they're currently designed as purely focused for gameplay and content, first and foremost.
Yes. That is all they're intended for at this time. Watch CitizenCon. That's actually not about asteroid bases. But
CitCon hype.
I shouldn't have even tied those two together. That's not fair to tie those two together, but you should watch CitizenCon. How do you envision contested zones evolving over time to prevent them from becoming static content?
But yeah, totally. I mean, this is a live game, so we will continuously update these places with any new items that might be popping up, any new systems. I mean, we have to maintain, we are constantly, as level designers, going back to old locations and giving them an upgrade when some change to a system comes up, right? So the same would apply here for the contested zones as well.
Right. As something like pet copions does become available to players and stuff like that, they'll have to revisit the balance of that as the light amplification scopes that are scheduled to arrive in 4.0 and stuff. I'm sure that had to change a couple things with, we thought that was a dark corner. Not anymore. You make a really great point, Con. I'm grateful that you brought it up. It's every time a new gameplay system comes online and stuff like that, there's always something that has to get revisited and has to be reiterated upon in order to incorporate that stuff in. And these will be no different.
Yeah.
Will contested zones have any time pressures that player must manage, or can players just take their time?
There's going to be time pressures. Specific locations even have timed gates. So during these timers, we attract players to be there. Other times, certain things will be locked, so there's no point in going there. So yeah, there's going to be timed gates. The other added pressure is just the population that exists there, right? Like, you won't be able to fully eliminate the static AI population or the traps that just exist in this space. So there's a physical pressure, and then there's also the other side with timed gates.
Okay. Yeah,
like you can only go in at certain times.
Discussions about PvP and camping as well. We want the PvE environment to be constantly pushing against the players as well. So yes, you could find a loot box, loot it, and then try and stay there to see if you can loot it again later. But we would then want the environment to be pushing back on you for respawning enemies, patrolling enemies. To really not allow that.
I was looking at this. You said timed, and I just had terrible flashbacks. I was at Blizzard when we did the Gates of Encourage,
and the first timed event, and told everybody in Azeroth to go to one place at the exact same time, and what that did to performance and stuff like this. This isn't going to be the same thing, right? A timed event, and suddenly we're going to make everybody go to one of 5 places, or
It will be a bit more loose than that.
okay.
Yeah.
For both asteroid bases and contested zones, we're almost out of time. How varied will they be from base to base? 6.
Sorry?
I said, for asteroid bases and contested zones, how varied are they? We know there's about 5 of this and whatever this. Are they substantially different? Are they variations on a theme? What are we talking about as far as variation?
For asteroid bases, we're working on 3 variants. So, like Manon mentioned earlier, we got the encounter variant, we got a more explorative variant, which has a lot more like of an abandoned theme to it. And then we got kind of the contested zone. It's not specifically contested zone, but it is a location that ties to the overall progression that we are planning for.
Okay. And last question. We mentioned this is okay, lots of MMOs going back to the end of the beginning of time here, and make no mistake, Star Citizen is an MMO. Our single player experience is Squadron 42, or the persistent universe is our multiplayer experience. That's not to say that there isn't a way to make your living as a solo player, but I mean, the overwhelming majority of the game is designed for a multiplayer experience. That's why we have a single player and a multiplayer. Where was I going with this? Oh, for a lot of MMOs, dungeons are normal occurrence. Everything has some area that counts as their dungeon. Some they go in here. There's an entrance. There's a progression through. There's mobs to fight. There's an occasional boss. We talked a little bit about your desire for boss fights, John, when we filmed ISC. This last question says, what lessons, if any, from other games have informed your approach to creating what is our first version of that kind of experience with asteroid bases and contested zones? What have you learned from other games?
So when we first started looking into this and we were in kind of pre-production, we obviously looked at all current MMO, dungeons. I think between the level designers, we've kind of played a lot of them. So, WoW, Final Fantasy 14, all the obvious ones. And we obviously looked into the dungeons and how we could apply what they have to what we tried. And we did originally kind of internally call them open dungeons. And the idea was to have a kind of traditional experience of, there's a start and an end. It gets harder the deeper you get. There are packs of enemies. But because we are Star Citizen and we are a unique MMO in that, these are open, we kind of looked more to the old school MMOs for a bit more of where to pull from, like EverQuest, and which had those open space dungeons where lots of players could go in. So we kind of pulled on that thread a little bit. And then we also looked at, in terms of like map layout designs, we were pulling from like Guild Wars 2 and things, where we looked at how they laid out their dungeons, the branches and the way to move players around the space. So we did pull from existing and old MMOs.
Lessons.
But at the same time,
You're not talking about floor plans. You're talking lessons.
No, sorry. Yeah, I should clarify. Lessons. Yes.
You're going to get a lawyer busting through my door here in 5 minutes.
No. We certainly have our unique layouts. Yes, the lessons we pulled from these and our experiences
stolen straight from Blizzard
as to what we could apply to what we were doing, and yeah.
I mean, that said, if you want to build Karazhan in Star Citizen, I'm all for it. Let's fight Little Red Riding Hood. Let's do it.
I mean, we already have Ghosts, so yeah, why not have Karazhan as well?
All right. Anybody else want to add to that? Con, Manuel?
I mean, pretty much what John said, right? It's like we need to. We are building something that we think is fun in the first iteration, and like also like as we are like being vivid MMO players as well, and we build something that we think fits the game a lot. But obviously. We need to find out, like, you know, we want to know about the play experience and see their reactions and what they like and what they don't like about it, so we can refine the existing ones, and we can make the new ones we're working on like even better and so on.
That's the biggest
Like, I
thing.
think
That's what I was trying to say before. The things that they're talking about in this, especially things like the way that they're doing the rewards, the way they're doing the system itself, how they're probably putting NPCs in here, probably even the respawning stuff. All of that is going to be temporary because it's all being tested for whatever this first patch is, and probably a couple of more. But like when we got stuff in 3.0, it's not the same stuff we're playing now. It wasn't even the same stuff we were playing in 3.10. They put it in, they saw how we responded to it, and then they started reworking those systems. They're probably going to do the same thing to the way they're doing these components, the way they're doing rewards for these sort of contested zones and all that kind of stuff. So I expect it to change. But as we know, that's not what is said, right? That's not universally communicated to everybody. So for that first however long it is that we have a patch like that, I mean, we're seeing this literally with the inventory system. The things that end up coming in get treated as a permanent change rather than something that maybe can use some criticism or some feedback, and people will see that as the game doing something permanent that could end up being very bad for the game instead of something that is doing temporary that just needs to be tweaked or changed. And so we will see how much of the stuff that comes in with these new locations is vibes very well with the game and how much of it they need to change a little bit going forward. But overall, 4.0 sounds like there's going to be a lot of stuff to kind of wrap our heads around, and I bet it's going to be a couple of patches before we really get, oh god, right, cops, before we get just how much of it is actually sticking around. Dude, 10 memberships. Thank you, man. As the guy keeps saying, and he will keep saying that until they finish counting down.
all the great games, right? It's like they're building something and then see what the players like in particular for like their game bubble, and then trying to make that better.
No, that's a great point. We're in a position that other games don't get. We don't have to, and this will upset certain people and a certain selection of people, and that's okay. It is me. And if it upsets, it upsets. We don't have to figure every single thing out ahead of time. Because we run a live environment in the middle of our development, we can afford to test. We can afford to put a thing out there and try it. And instead of assuming that people will react this and assuming people will react like that and assuming people will like this and assuming people will hate that, instead of assuming, we can actually put these things out there and test them and get actual feedback and go, okay, so that wasn't as bad as we thought it was, so there's something there. This didn't work.
Guess I could have just waited for him to say
so
this.
We can move away from that, and that's been a hallmark of Star Citizen's development since the PU began in 2015. So we have this double-edged sword that definitely cuts both ways, where we can use the virtue of our live environment in the middle of our development to test certain things that other games might not even ever attempt. But at the same time, it means that there are a lot of decisions that sometimes come out, and there are plenty of players who are scratching their heads and they're like, that was never gonna work and whatnot. It's like, and that's certainly an opinion, and it might even have been the right one.
Hover mode.
We don't have to guess. We can afford to test and try out, and that's a benefit, ultimately a benefit to our project. And I really liked your answer there, Manuel. So that was just me saying I really like your answer. Folks, that's it. Thanks for watching another episode of Star Citizen Live. What's it called? Contested Zones and Asteroid Bases. I remembered it. If you haven't already, check out yesterday's Inside Star Citizen about the pyro system and non-combat shooty gameplay stuff. Everybody's got this idea that pyro is just carnage and chaos, but it's not just. There's more stuff too. So check out ISE from yesterday. Next week, SEO will be off. I'm gone for the entire week because it's my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday,
I'm
dude.
old.
ISC is we're going to be airing. I'll just be honest with you. We're going to be airing a segment that we shot more than a year and a half ago. We shot it for a last Ship Showdown and didn't use it. So we're using it this week while I'm gone. It's a retrospective look back at the amazing contributions of superstar concept artist Gavin Rothery. If you've never seen him or heard of him or whatever, we think you're going to love him.
Gavin does a lot.
Your favorite people.
He's all over the place.
Project, responsible for more spacecraft and vehicles than any single human being in Star Citizen. So he's got quite a legacy there. So you can check that out if you want. And then we're back in 2 weeks. Or ISC, we're going back to Pyro. We're going back to all the combat and carnage and chaos with a few new elements that you may not be suspecting. So check that out.
Faction warfare.
Check out Xenothreats.
Faction gameplay.
That's pretty cool.
Please.
Let's just say they do not clean up after themselves, which will be a surprise to no one.
Yeah. What did we learn about PvP though? Basically, that it's not changing the direction of Star Citizen. It is just included in what happens in Star Citizen. It's part of the design of the game. It's something that they definitely want to build systems to allow you to avoid and to protect you from it, but those systems aren't here yet. And so that makes it a lot more difficult to, more enthusiastically get into it. But we will continue to talk about this topic going forward. I'm sure there will be more episodes of ISC or SCL on it. And I'll make a video about it probably at some point this year, I think. But no, I hope you guys had a good time. I had a good time. I always enjoy chatting with you all and talking about these topics and trying to bring some old information back into the limelight to better inform and just make things, more aware of this stuff.